I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners, Turrbal tribe of the Mianjin region, which is also known as the Brisbane metropolitan area. I would also like to pay my respects to elders past, present, and future. First Nations cultures, viewpoints, and country in Brisbane, where I lived for 2 years, were not visible and did not seem valued. Over the 2 years, I learned quite a bit about the colonial history from the white Australian point of view, through museums, tourist destinations, and from Australians themselves. However, I did not learn from the First Nation perspectives. Little did I know, signs of Turrbal culture can be spotted throughout Brisbane in streets and areas named in Turrbal language such as Woolloongabba or Whirling Water, and the South Bank Art Gallery represents the traditional owners of Turrbal land. Because of the colonial history of Australia, First Nation cultures seem to be close to extinction. Through three phases of initial invasion, occupation of First Nation land, and the eventual colonial establishment, white Australians systemically broke down First Nations relationships to country, which in turn broke down First Nation cultures and perspectives. First Nation people have been marginalized, forced to live in poverty, and forced to assimilate to white Australian culture. Meanwhile, white Australians rapidly developed Australia into a capitalist, industrial nation that we see today, forcing First Nations into the shadow. I have not noticed the visibility and valuing of First Nations when I live in Brisbane. This might because it was not brought to my attention. Among many things I learned from my Australian friends, First Nation awareness was not one of them. I came to learn that First Nation cultures and perspectives were not taught in school in Australia. This might explain why First Nation cultures were not among the many things my Australian friends introduced me to. The lack of knowledge on First Nation cultures by Australians are not an accident, but the result of ongoing systemic efforts to oppress First Nation people. By not teaching First Nation cultures, First Nations will remain irrelevant in the minds and hearts of Australians. By deliberately hiding the truth about colonial invasion and First Nation resistance, the Australian public will not act on the social injustice which oppresses First Nation people. The government funds Closing the Gap programs as a token effort to justify majority inaction towards the systemic racism against First Nations to maintain the current status quo. The truth is that First Nation cultures and perspectives were not visible to me, and through my learning in this course, this is a result of the Australian colonial history, systemic racism, and a deliberate hiding of the truth by the government.